Hey there, lovely listeners. Welcome to Uniquely Wired Podcast. I'm your host, Nani. On this podcast, we uncover the beauty and nature of autism through heartfelt conversations. Let's jump in. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Uniquely Wired Podcast. I'm your host, Nani, and on this episode, we are going to dive into the most amazing conversation of AAC. And I have a special guest. Well, if you've been listening and you've been watching, then you know her, Miss Katie. She is my son's Karen speech therapist and also my daughter's private speech therapist as well. And I am just so grateful to have her with us again. And like I said, we are going to dive into the topic of AAC, which is, in other words, a communication device, just for those that don't really understand it. She's going to break it down for us and answer some questions that I have for her that are very basic questions, but I feel like some families may also have these questions. So, Katie, if you can reintroduce yourself to the listeners, especially for those that are new. And yeah, let us know who you are, where you're from, what you do, and all the things.
Hi, everyone. I am Katie, better known as Miss Katie. I am currently a speech language pathologist doing early intervention in Philly, but that 3 to 6 year old age group, which is Nani's son. And then I do some private sessions on the side. It's usually kiddos that I saw in early intervention that I'm continued to seeing, or like Ellie, the sibling of a kid that I'm seeing right now. I do like to say that I specialize in AAC. That being said, I'm self-taught, like most of our SLPs in the world. AAC is just my niche. Like, I picked AAC. I enjoy it. I love watching kids thrive with it. So most of my caseload is pretty heavy with AAC, but I wouldn't change it for the world. I really love it. I am from South Jersey. If you are local to Jersey, you know it's very different than North Jersey. I'm about like 15-20 minutes from Philly, which is why I work there. But yeah, I'm so excited to talk more about this topic because it's really starting to flourish, at least in the social media world. But there are so many people that have no idea what it is and how it can help their kids or their loved ones, adults even. So I'm very excited for this.
Yeah, I think that is so true. You just touch a point right there, which is the reason why we're doing this episode, because I've had so many families that are like, I have no idea. What is AAC? How can I get an AAC? It's usually like the most common question that I get on my messages on Instagram. So I'm just so excited to dive into this topic. So I know you say you're self-taught, like most SLPs. And can you just elaborate a little bit on that, because I think a lot of families feel as though speech therapists should know about this, right? Like I've had some families that are like, well, my child's speech therapist has no knowledge on AAC. Like, what in the world? And I personally thought, and I believe I share this with you, I thought you guys learned this in school, in college. And so you corrected me and mentioned how no, this is not something that, they add in there in your curriculum. And it's something that you just have to go on and learn yourself and get those trainings and all that fun stuff. So can you just elaborate a little bit on that?
So as speech therapists, it's important to know that we don't just treat little kids. And if you listen to our last episode, you heard me go into a little more about that, how we treat people, individuals throughout the entire lifespan. And it includes many things, including cognitive therapy, articulation therapy, language therapy. And AAC is just one small little piece of that giant umbrella of things that we are expected to learn and know as SLPs. That being said, I think I had one course in grad school and 0 courses in undergrad. And my undergrad is actually in speech pathology and audiology. A lot of them now are in communication disorders. So it's like 6 years of schooling and one class on AAC. And when I tell you I'm a brain dumper, I could not tell you one thing I did in that class. Because you kind of learn on
Wow.
to the next topic. So I was lucky that my own, I guess, like work history as an ABA therapist, I had had a few clients right off the bat that had AAC devices. And so I was like, oh, this is like super interesting, super intriguing. And I just went for it. So in grad school, I had told supervisors when I went out to school and did what they call boot camp, it was clinicals on campus in Kentucky. Um, I had mentioned that I was very interested in AAC. So they gave me a lot of um, clients at that time with different kinds of AAC. One kid was using PECs, one was using a high tech AAC device. And then I was also part of a like AAC group. But other than that
Fun.
experience, and only because I said I was interested in it, we didn't really learn that much. So a lot of what I know is A, through experience, just working with the population of kids I work with. And I just got done working with a 21-year-old with an AAC device, which was super cool. Very different than working with a 5-year-old. And
I'm sure.
yeah, it was very different. But again, I that's how I learned everything I know about it. That and continuing education courses that I've taken online because know better, do better. Like I want to do better for my clients and I need to know
Right.
better in order to get there. So the likelihood of your SLP parents listening not knowing too much of AAC is actually higher than an SLP that does know a lot about AAC. It really depends on where that individual speech therapist's interests really lie and like what kind of special education or continuing education, I'm sorry, classes they're taking, because that's really going to be where they learn the most. I feel like I learn the most from continuing ed classes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
don't get discouraged if your SLP doesn't know a lot. Try not to get frustrated, although sometimes it's hard to even find an SLP, and I can't imagine how frustrating it is. Like you finally get a speech therapist, and they're like, "I don't really know about this." So yeah,
Mhm.
it's a lot, but there are other speech therapists out there that do consulting with families and consulting with speech therapists, just to try and
Yeah.
help them navigate that better because we're thrown into a lot of situations as speech therapists. I know the first time I get a client with a new diagnosis, it's going to be a first time and I'm going to have to learn all about it. So try not to get
Yeah.
discouraged. There's a lot of resources online to learn about, ask questions. You can never ask too many questions. Um, and, if you're really interested in it, hopefully you can get your SLP interested in it and they'll be more inclined to do some CEUs and learn more.
Yeah. And I think like you said, it's becoming such a big thing now. And so many families are learning about it that I think they're becoming more and more interested in it. So that's awesome. Okay, so what is AAC? Obviously, for those that don't know. Um, and how does it benefit individuals who are nonverbal, non-speaking, however you want to word it, or have limited verbal communication? Like we know that my daughter is limited, right? She is fully capable. We know she has the language. We know that she can do it, but obviously she's kind of limited. So she still has an AAC. And then we have Jacob, who has been recently saying, you guys, so many sounds. So we are so proud of him. And I literally, this is so funny. I have to record him saying Jacob because I've been slowly trying to teach him how to say his name. The cutest thing ever. And you know what? To some people, it might sound like crazy or like a mess when they hear him, but to me, like I get it. I know what he's saying. And I know you will too, because obviously SLP, they just get it. Um, so yeah, like how does first let's break down what is AAC. What does AAC stand for? And how does it benefit those children or perhaps adults as well?
So AAC stands for Augmentative and Alternative Communication. So that includes everything that allows a person to communicate without speaking. There's several different kinds of AAC, but the most common one and the one that I think everybody has the most questions about are the high-tech AAC devices, which allow a person to push a button that speaks a message. The goal of AAC is to enhance someone's ability to communicate with the people they interact with every day. So just because somebody's not using verbal words doesn't mean they're not trying to communicate with you. And what AAC in all of its forms does is enhance that person's ability to communicate. There's different kinds of AAC, like I had mentioned. There's what we call unaided AAC, which is something such as like sign language and gestures. There are forms of communication that are not speaking that are also unaided. So a person doesn't need anything additional in order to communicate with signs and gestures. We have aided communication, which there's low tech versions and then there's like mid tech versions. The low tech versions would be like PECs or printed out communication boards that are just like single sheets of paper. Um, it could be like a big communication board that you put on your wall. They're all aided communication, but they're low tech. So there's no technology, but it's aided because those things are aids, if that makes sense. If we're putting this all together, I'm trying to really break it down. And then the mid tech version of aided communication is still something that uses aids, and it's not quite that high tech iPad, touchscreen, pushing buttons, forming sentences, but it does have a technology piece. A lot of them are like the pre-recorded buttons. They're about like this big. They have big ones and little ones, but it's a single message button. So you push the button and it says a message that somebody has recorded. So it might be my voice, it might be a parent's voice. They record the message on the button. Same with the Go Talk devices, except for they are a field of buttons, and there's anywhere between 2 and 32 buttons. And essentially, you print a piece of paper, you put it like inside the device, and then you record the messages for those buttons. So again, there's some technology, but it's not that high tech, really robust system you get from a touchscreen device, which is really what I think everybody has the most questions about. So essentially, those high tech communication devices, which are the iPads and the tablets, like I said, that have touch screens. You touch the buttons and they communicate a message. They are wonderful. They are very robust and they're very customizable. You can add images that are specific to the user, such as family members and parents. I know we really customized Ellie's device to work on responding to personal WH questions. What's your name? When's your birthday? Do you have any siblings? And for her specifically, I'd gone under the people's page and we had talked about this because you put brother and a picture of Jacob. And I said, yes, like that's her brother. But we also want her to be able to say Jacob and then also say brother. So I think we switched it. The picture of just Jacob says Jacob, and then there was a picture of her and her brother, and we used that as brother so she can associate them. You can't really customize the mid-tech or the low-tech to that degree. I mean, you can, but then you're printing out a whole new sheet of paper, more laminating. It's not as quick to switch. With the high-tech devices, you can do it right there. The high-tech devices also have many languages and numerous voice options. And within those voice options, there's also different dialects of voices. So Jacob and Ellie are both using English speaking voices with a Spanish dialect. And those voices are also available in Spanish on their devices. So when we switch from English to Spanish, it's the same voice, same dialect. They're just speaking two different languages, which is wonderful. So we're supporting that bilingualism as well. One more thing I definitely want to hit on with the high tech communication. It's not just for people who can touch a screen. They have, there's high tech devices that have adaptions such as eye gazes or adaptive switches. The eye gazes are super cool. I have not used it with anybody yet, but essentially the user looks for what they want on the screen and the device recognizes their eye gaze after they hold that gaze on that button for X amount of time, and then it produces the message. So they're like touching it with their eyes, which I
That
know.
is so cool. It's crazy though because I saw that in one of the moms that I follow. She posted that because her child, I forget the disability that they have, and I don't want to missay it, but he literally has very, very low muscle tone. Like he
Yes.
can't really, like he can't grasp something. So the fact that she posted a video of him for the first time actually communicating that way, I mean, I literally cried. I was in the comments like, okay, I'm just joining the tear crew because what?
Yes.
Amazing. And
So
he
cool.
literally picked the right thing, and his SOP was there with him. I was like, this is so amazing. The fact that that's being provided to those kiddos, right? Or even adults that don't have that physical capacity, right? To be able to like touch and grab. And it's just beautiful. Like, it's amazing how technology has just like, I mean,
Yeah.
flourished.
It really is just so wonderful, because think about, there's a lot of not just children who are born with um expressive language delays and struggles like Ellie and Jay, but think about an adult who gets diagnosed with LS, traumatic brain injury, has a stroke. Most of the time, just like with Ellie and Jay and all of our little communicators, they know what they want. They know what they want to say. Without aided communication, without augmented communication, so other ways of communicating other than speech, they can't communicate with you. So if you go, I encourage you, go Google videos of adult using an eye gaze system, videos of child using an eye gaze system or AAC system. They, especially if you need a good cry, because I could sit there all day and just, oh, the tears, it's just so wonderful
Yeah.
watching someone access the ability to communicate.
Yeah. Like this whole time, they can't communicate. And then boom, they get blessed with such technology. Like, what? That is
Yeah.
out of this world. So I looked her up on Instagram. So, and I'm gonna send you the video. It's actually, he has epilepsy.
Okay.
Um, but I'm guessing like pretty severe, and you'll see the video. And I got to meet this mom actually at the Moments of Joy Fest, not this recent one, but the first one last year. And it was beautiful to be able to share the panel with her and meet such a strong person because you know you you know you're strong, right, to a certain ability, but when you meet moms that I feel just, I was just sharing this with someone that really has it more tough than those of us that sometimes complain and take life so lightly, and we don't realize that some people have it so much harder,
Yeah.
than us. And it was just beautiful to be able to meet such a wonderful person like her. And when I saw that she posted that about her son, I literally cried. This was maybe like 2 weeks ago. I was like, she actually was able to find something that she can communicate with her son. And I could just hear the joy in her voice when she was recording. I was just like, I can't. I get so excited.
It's so
So that's awesome. There's so many ways for a child to communicate. It's a matter of working with that speech therapist and parents getting involved.
yeah.
Because if Miss Katie is teaching my son something, when she was seeing him for 2 years at the preschool, and I wouldn't have carried that over to the home, he wouldn't be as successful, to be honest with you. Because if they're seeing, oh, I just have to be active in school with this, when I'm home, I don't got to worry so much about it, then there's no consistency for the child. With Ellie, now that she's in a new school, I can tell. She's
Mm.
coming home with that device, like half battery, and I'm like, the people don't understand the joy. The fact that this AAC is like dying
Yeah.
battery wise.
I mean, it really
Remember when
is.
I texted you? I was like, oh my gosh, they are using it. How about it's 8% when she came home? And like, what? The fact that they implementing it. So I'm starting to see that she's slowly picking back up on the interest in it. So that's awesome.
Yeah, no, that teamwork makes the dream work, right? Everybody needs to be on board. Parents, siblings, cousins, extended family, teachers, all the therapists.
Mhm.
If everybody is on board and everybody is modeling and supporting that communication, they're
Absolutely.
going to want to use it. Like it really takes a village.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah.
and it's very easy to get discouraged at first because it can be overwhelming. But once everybody is on board and everybody's working out as a team and everybody's using it, you do see a lot of success with these kids. Like they finally have a way to communicate. Are they still going to have some of their behaviors? Yes, they're learning a whole new language. So,
They really are, like a whole new life.
yeah.
Eh,
Yeah.
like they weren't born thinking, "Oh, well, this is what I'm going to do." This is like literally we have to teach them. So, and you have to give yourself grace too as a parent because we can become so frustrated. And I'm speaking from a parent perspective. We can become so frustrated. So I do understand how a parent can easily want to give up on, like, I don't want to do this anymore. This is too much.
Mhm.
But really just finding your village, and most of the autism mom friends that I have do have kids with their AACs, and they might have a different program than mine does. But like the fact that we just get each other when they have touched a button and they have completed a sentence, like what, or they've answered a question with their AAC, like we celebrating. Okay, we be on the phone like texting, like, oh my gosh, so and so just did this. Like we're celebrating. So it's important to have that community too. Don't keep it to yourself. And if you haven't found that community, listen, put it on social media. I guarantee you will get a community. Okay. Because someone out there is going to get you.
Yes.
Okay. So, next question. How does AAC specifically benefit autistic children? And what are some common misconceptions about its use? So, I know we kind of touch on how it benefits them. So, how about what are some of those misconceptions? Because we already know we have a lot of those. So,
Yes.
can you share some of those?
Some of the big ones right off the bat are they're just playing with it, right? They're just playing with it. They're just pushing buttons. They're not saying anything with it. They're just playing with it or they're stimming on it. They just hit the tiger button 15 times. They're not playing with it. They're not stimming on it. They're babbling. They're babbling. You wouldn't tell a baby to stop babbling, right? Like, and I don't want to compare our kids to babies, but they're learning language back at that spot now because they're going to start babbling. So we can reframe that they're playing with it, they're stimming on it as they're babbling, they're exploring, they're learning where the buttons are. How are they going to learn what the buttons are if they don't touch all of the buttons? For some kids, they just want to know what it sounds like. What does this word sound like? And they push it. It says whale. And they're like, huh, push it again. Whale? Whale. Whale. Interesting. Now they've pushed it 15 times and then they're on to the next button, right? And now that's how they learn. That's how they're finding things. They're listening to the word being said. They're reading the word in the sentence bar. They're pairing it with the picture. They're learning a lot of language skills. They're not just playing. So I think that's the biggest misconception. And under no circumstance, parents, under zero circumstances ever, let someone take that device away from your kid. Don't let them take it away. If they have a device
Say
and it's
that again. Say
IEP,
that again. Say that again. Say
don't
that
let
again.
them take it away. If it's in their IEP, they're not allowed. And I encourage someone to correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure it's illegal to take it away when it's a support written in their IEP. I have a few kids that just went to kindergarten. I just found out their teacher is taking their devices away. One, she said, oh, she's got verbal words. She doesn't need it. Not true. How do you think she got those words? Ma'am, she got it from using her aided communication, her communication support, her AAC device. The other kiddo has no words. And he was just stimming on the animals. It was distracting. Would you tape a child's mouth shut if they kept saying the same word over and over again? You wouldn't? Oh, so why would you take someone's voice away then?
Mm-mm.
Don't ever take it away. Don't let anyone take it away. If it's becoming distracting, if they're being too loud, let's teach them to turn it down. right? A lot of these kids, once they realize that this is their voice, they use it to self-regulate. My one kiddo specifically loves the animals. When he's dysregulated, he wants to go and he wants to touch and listen to the names of all of the animals. That's how he regulates. And he was unfortunately like told by the teacher that he wasn't allowed to do that and they took it away. Now he has no voice and no verbal words really to communicate. Super frustrating. Imagine someone giving you the ability to communicate and then someone else taking it away. So, parents, never let anyone take your child's voice away. Ever, ever, ever. They're not playing on it, they're learning it. The other
Exactly.
big, huge misconception that I really want to address, if I give my kid this device, they're not going to talk. They're not going to want to talk. It's the opposite. All of the studies show that high tech, robust AAC supports verbal speech. And why does it support verbal speech? We will never know probably the specifics. Why do our children with autism struggle with talking? We may never know the specifics. Through my experience, I think a lot of it has to do with motor planning issues, the motor planning of the message from the brain to the mouth and like all of the motions that go into forming words. Well, the AAC device relieves the stress of that, right? The AAC device, they can push these buttons to communicate what they want without feeling the overwhelming stress of having to say verbal words. So a lot of our kids, once they finally can communicate, they start imitating what they're hearing on the device or what they're hearing. I know Jay is a perfect example. The other day in session, we were sorting by categories and he was trying to say clothing. Of
He
all words, I was
was.
like,
He
clothing. And he
was.
was trying to say everything he heard me say and that device say because he doesn't feel pressure to say those words. He can say it on his own time
Yeah.
because he has the support of aided communication. So, misconceptions are playing on it and it's going to keep them from talking. All not true. One more really important misconception I want to address is there's too many buttons on the screen. They need less
Oh my
buttons. There's too
gosh.
many buttons for them. It's overwhelming. That's not the case. I start all of my preschoolers with 60 buttons, sometimes 42, depending on the kid. But I
Period.
aim for 60. And when I say all of them, I just got a whole new caseload. Some of the kids are new 3-year-olds, and I showed them 60 buttons the other day. New 3-year-olds. We're talking about toddlers here.
I know.
Immediately.
Yeah.
And they're imitating me. They're exploring. I'm like, see, they don't need fewer buttons. The only thing that removing buttons does is make the system less robust. A lot of parents tell me, oh, my kid knows what they want. They understand what I say. So, like, I'd really like to try it with them. And then I'm like, all right, let's do 60 buttons. And they're like, no, that's way too many. It's overwhelming. Okay, well, if your kid knows what you want, I bet you he's not talking in one word phrases, yes, no, more, and all done in his brain, right? If your kid can scroll through YouTube and find what they want, they can, which is usually much smaller, they can scroll through a device and
I
communicate
agree.
what they want. There's a
I
lot of different
agree.
apps out there, so it is about finding the app and the symbol set, the type of pictures that are best for your child, the ones that they really like vibe with the most, the kinds of
Mhm.
pictures they associate the world with. But once you find that system for them, you want to start them as many buttons as possible, as most. So it's the most robust as possible.
Yeah.
Because what I've seen happen, and through my experience, I was one of those speech therapists a long time ago. Let's start with 20, and when they're good at it, once they get it, we'll move up to more buttons. What was happening, we needed those buttons that are on the 60-page set when they were using 20 buttons in order for us to model. Or we're trying to add buttons. And they were like,
Mm,
we need more space. We move up to 42. Well, now
right.
the motor plan your child just formed, learning the other vocab is out the window. They have to relearn the whole device. It's like learning a whole new language. And it's super frustrating. So a lot of kids will just be like, never mind. Like, I can't say what I want anymore. Like, they don't understand. And it's frustrating. Imagine someone, this is my analogy for everything. Someone moves all of the apps on your phone and you can't find anything. Super frustrating. Phone doesn't update.
Frustrating.
everything is moved. It's super frustrating. So if you start with 60, because that's mostly end goal, you can hide some buttons so you're not seeing all of them, but their buttons aren't moving. So your children and even adults alike are learning to use the device with the buttons where they are.
Mm,
Now, all of this is being said, assuming that the user doesn't have any other difficulties, such as fine motor difficulties, vision, those kinds of things, and they are able to access 60 buttons. Not every single person in the world is able to do that, but I would feel safe saying that the majority of, at least in my experience, the majority of the kids that we're working with are able to access those 60 buttons and do
yeah.
so beautifully.
Yep. Jacob has had 60 since we got him that device. Even his trial was 60.
Hmm.
Eliana, on the other hand,
Yeah.
we we already know. What was she on? Like 40 or 20?
She was on 25 and then 42. And when I saw her, she was on 42, but not really. No, she was on the 20s, and her speech therapist wanted to move her to 42, and I suggested 60. And then the
Mm-hmm.
AAC consultant came out and also suggested 60. So we went with 60. And
Literally, y'all, we had to get a whole AAC consultant. By the
yeah,
way, I almost forgot about that. Not sure why, because it was the most insane season of my life
yeah,
in a very long time. And I had shared this journey with you guys on social media, but just insane. And now it's just I feel like it actually limited her.
it
You
does.
know, the fact, right? Like, would you say it limits them when they're in such like smaller languages than allowing them to have such a robust, you know, pages and all the things? Like,
It
what?
does. That's a
Like,
really
why
good
are
way
we
to put
doing
it.
that?
It limits their language. It limits the type and amount of language they have access to, which then in turn continues to limit their ability to communicate. And we are trying to
Insane.
get rid of the limits. We're doing
Right.
the opposite. We don't want to limit
Exactly.
them.
Exactly. Okay, so I wanted to ask, I don't think I've ever asked you this question. Like, can AAC be introduced at any age? Or is there an ideal time to start?
There is no, and this is also very, very important, and I'm glad you asked this question, made me think of it. There's zero prerequisite skills for being able to use high-tech AAC. Your child does not need to be able to use a communication board. They do not need to try PECs first. They do not need to try any of these other things in order to introduce AAC. I have introduced it to children as young as 2.
Wow.
Um, I mean, there's 2-year-olds out there, again, back to the phone thing. Like, we're in a world of technology. There's 2-year-olds out there that know what they want to watch on YouTube and can
They really do.
use the different apps and stuff like that. So that their age is not a prerequisite skill for being able to access or use high-tech AAC. Um, Not even really attention. Like, a lot of times I'll hear like, "Oh, they're not attending to it." But attention looks different for everyone. Just because they didn't turn their body and look at it doesn't mean they're not attending. You could have been modeling something and they could have been acting it out in the corner because they're hearing you model it. So it's really important to look at what attention looks like for each kid. So, yeah, there is absolutely no prerequisite skills. I recommend starting it earlier rather than later. My whole caseload that I just got like 15 new kids. It's a lot. I'm meeting a whole bunch of new kids, learning all about them. But
Oh,
all of the kids I got in the ABA room, at least, none of them have communication systems. They're all little. They're like 3. So day one, I just am carrying my device around with me and modeling. And I
I
think I
love
saw 3
that.
kids that first week, and all 3 of them immediately interacted with it.
Wow.
Mhm.
That is
And if I never would have tried,
fantastic.
I never would have known.
Right. I
Yeah.
love that. Okay, so yeah, so there's no age, set because I'm thinking as well, like if someone loses their speech due to an accident or let's say cancer, like my mom lost her speech when she had cancer. Um, she completely lost her speech and she was getting speech therapy during that time. I remember her mentioning that to me. But obviously, I mean, we're talking about the 90s.
Yeah.
I'm not sure when AAC became like
It was a thing. Not as
okay,
not as high tech and robust as it is now because we didn't have the iPads per se,
okay.
but Tobii Dynavox has had devices around for a very long time. They used to be much
Is this like the one
bulkier.
in the documentary on Netflix?
Oh, I don't have Netflix, so I didn't see it, but probably.
Yeah, we don't have Netflix no more, but before we got rid of it, I don't know if you got to see that documentary.
I don't think I did.
Oh my gosh.
But that's probably it. I would call it a dinosaur now, but it's like an older system. They were huge, but they were like essentially you would push buttons and there would be like
Yes.
message communicated. So
Yes.
AAC has been around a long time.
Okay.
Um, just now that we have iPads and tablets, we're just able to
It's
access.
more easier. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, if someone eventually, right, God forbid, but they do end up going through such a season,
Hmm.
then hey, AAC is available
Yeah.
for them. And it's interesting because at that point they'll know even more too. Because
Oh yeah.
obviously they had language and then they lost it. So they know what word is what. So that's awesome. And I appreciate you sharing that. Now I wanted you to say because I do find myself struggling a little bit when I have to like tell families how to get an AAC or how to go about it because I know there's so many options and I know the best way to get it is through a speech therapist. However, there are other options that some parents just don't feel like doing all of that. And they're like, well, can I just purchase the app? Can I just, get this and that? And so, I'm like, look, do whatever works for you. But what's your suggestion as a speech therapist?
I first would recommend looking up what is accessible to you in your state. A lot of states have lending libraries and devices that are accessible for trial. You absolutely can, as a parent, just go buy the app off of the App Store and put it on an iPad. They're like most of them are available there.
And I
Um,
mean, there's nothing wrong with visuals.
mm-mm,
I need
mm-mm.
visuals as an adult, clearly.
Me too. I'm a visual learner.
Wait, I
Uh,
just have to say this really quick because it just popped into my head. Y'all, we were supposed to record this on a Saturday, okay? And Miss Katie texts me like, I just wanted to know if we were still recording. The funny thing is that it was supposed to be for 9 a.m. and she texts me at 9:30, but it's okay. And I was like, what? Granted, it was a Saturday. I'm like up, cleaning, doing all the things. I'm like, what? Oh my gosh, did I just forget there was an interview going on with my favorite speech therapist? This is unacceptable behavior. I looked at my husband like, okay, this seriously needs to stop. I need to figure out, my therapist needs to help me with like a good mechanism and all the things and strategy because this is unacceptable. Okay. So I just wanted to put that out there. So clearly, and why am I sharing this? Not that it is anybody's business for me to embarrass myself on my own podcast, but just saying that I too need visuals. Okay. Just putting it out there. Don't feel bad.
Visuals are wonderful. I'm a visual learner myself. My ADHD loves visuals, structure, all the things.
Facts.
Um, so yeah, visuals are great, like Nani said. Like if you can get, I know PRC Satillo has um like static, so they're not like technology based. They're that low tech AAC communication boards. They even have posters available on their website. You can like download and have printed somewhere, which I actually want to do for the school. But yeah, for the classrooms, PRC Satillo, they have some wonderful resources. But like I said, a lot of the apps are available on the App Store. The only reason I caution parents from just buying an app is because it's very likely that you're going to become overwhelmed. Like, now what do I do? What vocab do I choose? How do I edit this? Should I edit this? Should I not edit this? So I would really, really encourage you, if you're looking into an AAC device for your child, I would love to assume that your child has a speech therapist. However, I know that there's not enough of us, so they may not. I would look into seeing if you can find a speech therapist that does AAC consultations or even virtual AAC evaluations and coaching. I know Emily Diaz, SLP, I follow her on Instagram. I know she does like coaching, and hers is like virtual. So she does like virtual AAC assessments. Um, but that is something to look into, because I would caution people from just getting an app on their own, because it could turn into, well, I downloaded this app and they didn't like it. So then I downloaded another app, and they're not cheap. TouchChat's $300. I know I paid for it and then found out I could have gotten it for free as a speech therapist. But I have all the apps on my iPad because I want to make sure kids have access to the different kinds of vocabs. The different apps all function differently as well. So there's a lot of things that to consider when selecting an app and a vocab. So I would err on the side of caution before just going out and buying one. I would check your state for lending libraries, look up AAC support, or see if you can find a speech therapist that does AAC consultations, even virtually, if that's what you need based on your location, just so you have essentially someone driving your AAC
Yeah.
on your adventure, because it is, AAC is an adventure. You're taking on learning a whole new language. The whole family is. So you
Yeah.
definitely want somebody in the driver's seat that knows what they're doing.
I completely agree with you. And that's exactly what I say as well. And again, families are going to decide to do whatever they want to decide. You were born with making a choice.
Yeah.
You could make a choice. But at the end of the day, what's going to benefit not just you, but also your child? And I think the smart way to go about it is getting that evaluation through a speech therapist, especially if you know that this is something that's really going to be great choice
Mm.
for your child. I would have never imagined. I know when Ellie started early intervention when she was younger, and we had started this journey of autism. I mean, I wasn't really told about AAC. I started knowing more about it when she entered preschool, and that's when I was like, oh wow, like this is really a thing. And for me, it's very challenging because I have two age groups in my house, and also just their development. It's very different,
Mhm.
and um, it's very challenging. So I just want to say, don't feel bad if your child has had a device for 5 years and you're still clueless, because guess what, welcome. Okay, you're not alone. I'm right there with you, sis or bro. I always forget about the dads. I don't know why. I'm so sorry. There's no discrimination here. Okay, I love dads, just saying.
We want to
um
communicate with you too, dads. Don't worry.
Sometimes I forget there are single dads out there, that are really trying to get information, and so I'm just saying you two matter. um but like seeing Jacob and how he's learning his device and how quick he caught up on it, but also had to do with his speech therapist. I just have to say it. My friends brag about their kids' speech therapists, but I just have to say it everywhere I go. I don't know if I'll ever run into another Miss Katie. I don't know. And it's scary to even think that way. Now that Miss Ailana is leaving us, which I'm very sad about. Um, yeah, I
Gonna be
found
good
out.
now.
I found out, and my heart is broken. But it's hard when you get used to somebody for so long, for so many years, and because she has been in our lives for so long. it- yeah, now I just have to get somebody new. But I I don't have a problem with that. I people have to do what they got to do with their lives. But like I said, making sure you are getting that guidance through a speech therapist, because listen, the truth is, and I say this a lot, we don't know it all. And we have to put the pride aside every once in a while, maybe more than we think, and seek the help that we need.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. So, before we end the episode, is there any advice that you would share with the parents, that are listening, that maybe are just starting this journey with a speech therapist, and they're feeling stuck, maybe they're not really happy? What's an
Mm.
advice that you would give them?
Um, so there's a lot of things I could say. Some of my most important advice topics are presuming competence, modeling, and some of the other things I'd already hit on that, encouraging your user to use it, but don't ever take it away. Um, so what I mean by presuming competence, rather than oh, I don't know if they can use this. Let's give it to them and say that they can. Just give it to them. If I didn't presume that my little 3-year-old clients I just met on day one were competent enough to use this AAC device, I wouldn't have shown it to them. They wouldn't have never touched it. And like I said, all 3 of them used it. Like, we're going to presume that they can do it. We're going to assume that they know what they want, because most parents tell me, oh, they know what they want. They just can't tell me. And they understand. So they just can't tell me what they can't communicate with me. So we're going to presume that they're competent enough to communicate with you, because if they know what they want and we give them the access to the aids that they need, they can do it. My next and probably most important advice for parents is to model, model, model. Our AAC users need to see us modeling it in order to use their device. Typically developing children or children who are using verbal speech, they hear their native language, verbal words, being spoken around them for at least an entire year before they start to use their own words, right? They hear adults using their language, verbal words, to communicate with them, with each other, all around them. It's on the TV. Our AAC users need to see their AAC device being used to communicate, not just with them, not just as their voice, but around them too. And I know it's like, why have verbal words? Why would I use this device to tell my wife that I want to watch something on TV? Because if they don't see us using it, if your child, your AAC user, doesn't see AAC just being used in their entire world, why would they want to use it? If they see you using it with other adults, with other children, I encourage siblings to use it, cousins, the whole family. If they see everybody using it, then they're going to want to use it too, right? Like, I want to do that. So model it as much as you can. The more you model it, the easier it is to model, because your brain forms a motor plan, right? Like, the buttons aren't moving if we've done this right. And so you end up not even having to really look. Now I can model it upside down over here and know I'm pretty close to the right button. The more you model it, the easier it is for you to learn. The easier it's going to be for you to model. And then you'll be more comfortable modeling it in a bunch of situations. And we want to model it without expectation. We're not just modeling it and then like, here you go, you touch. No. No one's going to tell me what I want to say. We're not going to tell them what they want to say. We are going to model what they can say, what we're giving them the ability to say. If they want to say that, great. If they don't, they don't. You got to look at what progress and attention looks like for each individual person, because it looks different. Your 2 kids are a perfect example. I could model something for Jay and he may immediately go imitate the entire thing. I could model something for Ellie and she could watch me model it, look at me, and maybe verbally say every word but the last, or touch every button and verbally say the last. So you need to look at what progress and attention looks like for each individual user. So we're going to model all of the time without expecting them to ever touch it. It could take months for a child to buy into an AAC device. It could take minutes for a child to buy into an AAC device. Again, it's very different. Don't give up. I know it's frustrating. Find your support team, right? Find your tribe. Reach out to them. Like, I have been modeling this button forever. They won't use it. Like, maybe the picture needs to be different. Maybe you're not using it in the context that they like. But if you don't model it over and over at a nauseating amount, you'll never know. And one last piece of advice. We want our AAC users to have their voices with them all of the time, right? We're not letting anybody ever take it away. We're not taking it away. I encourage you to have your AAC user carry it around with them. It's super annoying. I know it's on the table right there, but we want them to go get it. We want them to bring it over to us. We want them to carry it to the lunchroom, carry it to the schoolyard because they need to view it as a piece of them. And if we're taking it everywhere for them, they never know where it is. But if they're taking it everywhere, I bet you they remember where they put it because they probably remember where that missing puzzle piece they hid is too. So,
I agree. I
yeah, so
agree.
we're presuming competence, we're modeling until we our fingers fall off, we're never taking it away, and we're just constantly encouraging our users.
Yeah, I love that. Such a great advice. And I agree with modeling and not just the modeling, but making sure they're taking it with them. Like my kids know whether we're going to church, whether we're stepping out, like they're looking at their device, like, okay, let me let me grab it. And I'm like, yep, grab your iPads, grab your iPads. They both grab it just fine. They start going on the steps. Like it's just a matter of building that routine, guys, and staying consistent with that. So I am so grateful we were able to talk about this. And I'm sure we could be going on and on with the AAC topic because, to be honest, you guys, it is a never ending conversation
Mhm.
between me and Katie. Like, we could literally just talk about AAC every time she comes into my
Yes.
house. I mean, because
Yeah.
what else are we going to talk about?
Mhm.
She ain't worried about my life.
We just
You
like
know what
talk
I'm
about it
saying?
through AAC.
She worry about my kids' life. She ain't here for me. So even though we sometimes vent with one another, we will do that. Because we've built such a good relationship throughout these years. But I'm just so grateful, and AAC is definitely, I mean, just amazing in my household and anyone I talk to. And some families are just like, they're stung, if we're in public, they're like, wow, that is such a cool thing. Like, it's incredible. And you'd be surprised how many people still don't know about it.
Yep.
So, I ran into a mom at the thrift store like maybe 3 weeks ago. It was like a kids' thrift store. And I come to find out that she knows someone that I know. So she's actually a speech therapist and she goes to my church. And the whole time we're talking, I am not thinking about this Elizabeth that I know. I'm not thinking about her. I'm just like, oh, wow, yeah. She's like, yeah, we're losing her soon because she's pregnant. And she actually is. And I was like, wow, that sucks. I gave her your number. I actually sent her your number through text. I don't know if she ever got to text you, but I did send her your number. And I was like, you can check with her. She does take private clients. I'm not sure how she goes about the whole thing, but definitely reach out because I feel so bad because I know what it is to lose someone that you get so used to. And long story short, the day goes by and we're texting, and she follows me on Instagram, and I see that we only have one mutual friend, and that was Elizabeth. And I was cracking up because I'm like, wow, she goes to church. What? Yes, she is a speech pathologist. But the whole time I did not, she was like, yes, that's our speech therapist. And I was like, she was like, yeah, her husband is a pastor. I was like, yeah, he's a youth pastor. And I was like, oh my God, what a small world. Till this day, I haven't even told Elizabeth about that story. She probably already told her, but so funny. Like, you just never know. You never know who you run into. But just to say that she was like, how did you get your son to like use that? She was like, I was like looking for clothes and I heard him go into his device, like, I want to eat goldfish. Of course, the famous goldfish. The day that Jacob does not choose goldfish or snack bar, it is a miracle. You guys, it is a miracle, okay?
He did eat
But
cookies that one day. That one day.
that's true. That is true.
He asked
And
for them.
chips. Yes. Chips. Let's give him credit for that.
Yes.
But no, like she was just asking me that because granted, her speech therapist Elizabeth, like it's wonderful with AAC. She is like pro AAC all the way. Um, but like she's having a hard time with her son, like he's just not showing any type of interest. And she's like, we're doing all the things with him. And, I'm like, I mean, I'm sure there's an option out there that, if that option doesn't work,
Mhm.
I'm sure maybe PEX will be a better option for him. I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, without knowing him,
Yeah.
I would probably recommend like first I would probably check his vocab and see if there's any way we can modify that to better suit his needs. Like maybe he needs some phrases, maybe he needs like
Yeah.
some scenes or something like that. Or I would check other apps. Like there's no right or wrong app. It really just depends on the user. Like I
Mhm.
usually start with touch chat. I've had a lot of success with it, but also that's what I'm most comfortable with. That's what I'm the most fluent in. So I'm going to start with that. If the kid's not into it, which happens,
Mhm.
or if they come to me or to my caseload already using a different app like Prolo Quota Go or TD Snap, then I'm going to learn it and that's what we're going to use. But there's no harm in trying a different app.
Yeah.
Your kid could have been successful with one app for a very long time and then just stop using it. So maybe it's just not
Yeah.
what you need anymore. But again, like I would encourage you to take all of those steps with your speech therapist. Because there's
Yeah. I
no,
think it's
no best.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
did want to note, like, if you're going through your insurance company to get a device, you are going to need an evaluation written by a licensed SLP. So
That
you
is true
cannot
because that's how
get,
we did it.
yeah, you cannot get a dedicated device paid for through your insurance without that evaluation.
And it's for a lifetime, by the way.
Mhm.
Like my daughter has it for a lifetime. After like every 5 years, she could get an upgraded one, which I can't wait till it hits the 5 year mark because this bulky, huge one drives me
Your mini,
crazy. And I feel so bad for her because she tries to carry it. I'm like, oh my god,
it's
I know this
huge.
is heavy for her. But anyways, I just want to thank you again, for joining us once again on the podcast. I know the listeners are in for a treat with this one. And yeah, I will leave her information down below, you guys, her Instagram. Also, which she'll continue to get better at with her Instagram. She'll continue
Well,
to, post content. Because I send her videos, you guys. Okay. She has no excuse. I
I,
tell her all the time, you could use my kids. Um, but yeah, that and her email. I don't
mhm.
remember. Do you have a website? I can't remember.
I do not have a finished website.
Okay. She
I
doesn't have a
started it,
website.
but didn't finish it. But if parents have questions, I would encourage them to reach out to me either through my email or Instagram. I am very consciously trying to get better at using that business Instagram. Um, so maybe I can answer some questions that maybe we didn't touch on because I'm sure there's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a lot of questions, especially that we touch in some, we spoke about some good things on the podcast today. So thank you again, Katie. And friends, don't forget to leave a review. It helps the podcast to boost up. And again, thank you for joining and for listening. I will see you again on another episode. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Uniquely Wired Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing this space with me. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share. Until next time.